And I want to take right now to go ahead and thank Casey Falkingham and Daniel Perkins, the two staff members who are responsible for making this program happen today. So thank you to the two of you. As you'll notice, we also have an ASL interpreter with us. Carol Garland is joining us, and thanks to the Bangor Interpreting Services, she is able to be with us. And I want to make sure everyone knows that closed captioning is available for those who wish to use it. We have this exciting program filled with information about what we've done as an organization, and we're going to introduce you to a survivor and her story. And we're also going to scatter some door prizes periodically throughout the program so people can have an opportunity to win some Partners for Peace swag. We have a variety of speakers who will be showing up on the screen, and we have this wonderful presentation that will kind of guide us through the program today. So I want to thank you all again for being with us. And next, I'm going to introduce our governing board chair, Joe Locke.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Joe Locke. I use he and him pronouns. I'm the chair of the governing board. The purpose of our annual meeting is for folks who are involved or want to get involved in the movement to end domestic violence in Penobscot and Piscataquis counties, to come together and celebrate our shared accomplishments of fiscal year 2021, and to renew our commitment to our mission for fiscal year 2022 and beyond. Before we go on, we want to acknowledge the land on which we serve. This land is in the traditional territory of the Wabanaki Confederacy. We recognize and honor the tribes who comprised the Wabanaki Confederacy, the Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, and Micmac peoples, who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We respect the traditional values of these tribes and affirm their inherent sovereignty in this territory. We support their efforts for this land and water protection and restoration, and for cultural healing and recovery. We're honored to do our work alongside our partners at Penobscot Nation Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Advocacy Center. If you're joining us from another Indigenous territory, please feel free to share with us in the chat or comments.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Denise Scuderi. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the vice chair of the Partners for Peace Governing Board. I want to take a moment to thank the staff and volunteers who have been there every day and answer the helpline and support survivors. It is important to acknowledge their commitment as we celebrate the work of this past year. This past year was challenging, as Amanda said, but also an exciting one. Partners for Peace advocates forged on during this global pandemic. And in fiscal year 21, staff and volunteer advocates helped 1,461 people affected by domestic violence. They answered 6,036 helpline and crisis calls, responded to 2,611 electronic contacts, and had 2,969 face-to-face interactions with survivors of domestic violence. 61 survivors of domestic violence received confidential shelter services, and this also included 25 children. 467 survivors received help with court advocacy and accompaniment for family members and protective orders. 81 survivors of abuse participated in online support and education groups, including a parenting group. And 1,064 people called Partners for Peace 24-hour confidential helpline. Our helpline advocates, group facilitators, court advocates, residential staff, interns, and volunteers were all there for survivors when they needed it the most. Thank you, advocates, for all that you do.
Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Falkingham. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Development and Engagement here at Partners for Peace. I am going to introduce you all to our peaks and our valleys that we had throughout fiscal year 2021. But first, oh, that was dramatic. Sorry, I messed it up. I've got a lot of screens over here, and we're all human, I think. But first, we have a door prize winner, which is Jenna's winner. We'll be emailing you to get your mailing address, so that a lot of our staff wear with lots of pride. So we had lots of ups and downs over fiscal year 2021. We are going to refer to them as peaks and valleys. Peaks being our high points and the valleys being our low points. Here are a few notable peaks and valleys from the past year. Amanda?
In FY21, Partners for Peace boldly changed its organizational structure to provide a more solid framework for expansion and innovation. We established departments with clear leadership, which proved necessary during a time of global uncertainty. The COVID-19 pandemic has been one long traumatic event that has impacted some of us more intensely. This includes our staff. In changing our organizational structure and reprioritizing resources, we established a human resources department with a full-time director and an employee assistance program to support our staff through this pandemic and beyond. We believe that by investing in our staff, we are in turn investing in survivors. When our staff feel valued, the survivors that we serve feel value as well. I'm sure we are all well aware that there's been a housing crisis here in the state of Maine, and we at Partners for Peace see it as our responsibility to find ways to address that housing crisis. We've done our best in our response and know we have a lot more work to do. But with our creative problem solving, we were able to expand our housing navigation services by training more staff to provide this service in our community. Casey?
Yeah, another low point or another valley, or if you will, a barrier to overcome, is that there is a serious lack of legal representation available for survivors of domestic violence and abuse, particularly when it comes to needing representation for protection orders. And so that was a huge barrier that we had to overcome, and that we've had to be really creative about, and that we're really grateful for our partners at Penquist Law and Pine Tree Legal Assistance for helping us when we needed it, and a huge shout out to our court advocates at Partners for Peace who have done some incredible work in lieu of having adequate representation for survivors in our region. Another valley that we continue to exist in is just a really challenging political and economic climate. Last year, we saw serious threats to our nation's democracy, and we continue to, these are unprecedented times. A peak would have been that thankfully the US Congress did reenact the Violence Against Women Act in March. This legislation funds the Office on Violence Against Women. Last year, we were proudly awarded over $1 million in grants from the Office on Violence Against Women that will continue to fund our really important rural advocacy program and our transitional housing programs. We also received new funding to establish new and better civil legal programming, which includes legal representation, a staff attorney position at Pine Tree Legal Assistance as a subcontract for survivors of domestic violence for protection orders. So even though we were in that valley, we see another peak on the horizon. We also received new funding for a justice advocacy program that we are looking forward to establishing in the near future. And that is for survivors of sex trafficking and non-fatal strangulation. And lastly, last year, our staff and our governing board committed to live by an Inclusivity Pledge. That was in fact created by our governing board and our staff and volunteers. We've shared this commitment widely, and we'd like to share it again now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Perkins. I'm the community educator here, and I use he, him pronouns. It's a true honor to share the Inclusivity Pledge with you. This pledge was created by Partners for Peace staff and governing board in January 2021. And all Partners for Peace staff, the steering committee, and volunteers have committed to the following. As agents of change in the movement to end domestic violence, we recognize the intersectionality of all oppression and stand in support of a revolutionary movement that has amplified the voices of marginalized people and communities impacted by deeply rooted social inequalities. We believe Black Lives Matter, trans rights are human rights, no human is illegal, people do not belong in cages, and there is no excuse for partner abuse. We celebrate all unique identities, including but not limited to Black and Indigenous people and all people of color, women, both transgender and cisgender, intersex people, non-binary people, men, transgender and cisgender, young people, elders, poor and working class people, people with disabilities, people with chronic mental health conditions, lesbian, gay, bisexual, asexual, pansexual people, and all others under the Q+ umbrella. Monogamous and polyamorous people, immigrants, and people with limited or no English proficiency, housed or unhoused people, and people of all faiths and traditions, no matter wealth, ability, intellect, sobriety, social status, or appearance. We acknowledge that this list is not all inclusive, and we will change as our knowledge grows. We have a lot to learn, and we're committed to learning with curiosity, seeking and accepting feedback. We pledge to continuously evaluate our accessibility barriers and intentionally examine personal and organizational prejudices that may negatively impact our practices, policies, and procedures. Partners for Peace will honor guidance from voices of folks on the margins, as well as our local and national coalitions. Diverse voices help drive our mission and center our values as we own our responsibility to corrective action. We realize that as domestic violence advocates, we're a small part of a greater movement to end racism, bias, assumption, violence, and exclusion. With this knowledge, we seek accountability for ourselves, our community partners, and other systems where racism and oppression are embedded in practice. Intention alone does not create change, so we will continuously implement anti-bias and anti-exclusion work in every part of our advocacy and activism. We are hearing and responding to the national dialogue, highlighting the urgent need for equitable change and cultural humility. We can and will do better, and we will be transformed. At this time, I'd like to pass it back to Casey.
Thank you, Daniel. And I think that our staff, our governing board, our volunteers, we would agree that in the past year, we have been transformed and we continue to transform as a movement to be more inclusive, be acknowledging harm that has been done in our community against marginalized people, harm that we in fact have been a part of, and we are committed to corrective action. It's not just a pledge to us. This is something that guides our everyday work. And because we can't, excuse me, here we go. Because we can't resist sharing more peaks with you all, more high points from our fiscal year 2021. Here are a few more. We launched an accessibility toolbar on our website called Recite Me with the help of our main coalition to end domestic violence. So that's one of the many ways that we have we've worked to integrate our Inclusivity Pledge within our work. To have this accessibility toolbar is huge. It translates our website, our web materials into hundreds of different languages and has other tools for accessibility right within our website. We completed renovations to our kitchen at our domestic violence shelter to make it more accessible. As previously mentioned, we did increase housing navigation services. We did this by training more staff to provide the service because if you haven't noticed, we do have a housing crisis here in Maine. And while we can't solve all of it, we did see that we needed to increase and expand our services, and we hope to do more of that in the future. We also successfully switched over to a new answering service for our helpline that hopefully our community didn't notice a huge change. That's the hope, is that you didn't notice the change, but that our staff were involved in lots and lots of hours of conversations and lots of coordination to make sure that went as smoothly as possible. We safely kenneled several pets with the Red Rover program. So that means when survivors of domestic violence stayed in our shelter, their pets were hoteled, or in other words, we kenneled them for free to the survivor with the help of the Red Rover program. We were also a COVID-19 testing site during a time when tests were really hard to come by. Tests were readily available to our staff and to the survivors that we served right at our sites, so that we could ensure that we were doing our part to minimize the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We continued support and education groups online. This included a parenting group for people who were engaged in child protective services, to be able to gain support from other survivors who also had open child protective cases and were working to reunify with their children. We also transformed our human resources department and the support that we provide to staff, because as previously stated, we believe that by showing our staff that we value you, our staff, that we are pouring love and kindness into our staff, and therefore that will be poured into the survivors we serve in our community as a whole. I recently had the honor of sitting down with one of the 1,461 survivors that we served last year, along with her Partners for Peace advocate, Jenna Ledger. For the sake of this story, we are going to call her Monica. This is not her real name. We've changed it to ensure confidentiality. But she sat down with us and we asked her a series of questions about her story, what happened to her, and also the work that she did with Partners for Peace and with her advocate, Jenna. I was absolutely in awe of everything that she shared with us, and she agreed to allow us to share that here in this space. It's about 10 minutes long. It's audio based, and the transcriptions of her words are going to be up on the screen. I want to do a content warning. She describes domestic violence, emotional abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, and depression. Daniel is going to drop our helpline number in the chat for anyone who might experience trauma reminders and might need to reach out to our 24-hour helpline. Monica has been working with Partners for Peace for a little over a year now. She has been a part of our transitional housing program, participated in support groups, and received case management from her case manager, Jenna. In the next several slides, she shares her story and the impact of the advocate-survivor partnership. Without further ado.
Over the course of many, many years of not just physical abuse, mental and emotional abuse, that's where it started for me. My first husband, that honeymoon phase where you think he's perfect, he's knight in shining armor and nothing can go wrong. So you don't even start to see the little things that maybe somebody else does, that external eyesight of, well, that's, that's a little manipulative, or that's a little abusive. My ex-husband got me to the point where I literally thought I was going crazy. He made me believe, even when I caught him with my own eyes, he had so much control over me that I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. Manipulative tactics was, he would only give me my divorce if I agreed to not make him pay me child support, and drop the protection order I had against him because he had slashed my tires when he found out I was seeing somebody new. So I had to drop the protection order and promised to not make him pay child support just to get divorced from him. At first, I was scared to even open up to a stranger when I called the hotline. But something told me I could trust, and I started to pour my heart out, sometimes multiple times a day, just to keep the dark, scary, and depressing thoughts and feelings I was having at bay. With these phone calls, I found love, support, and understanding. I found someone who listened, no matter what I had to say or how hard I cried. This started to give me the strength to crawl out of the seemingly endless darkness I had been experiencing. As I continued to work with Partners for Peace, I began to receive an enormous amount of support. Sometimes I would think it was too good to be true. How can I receive so much help? How do I deserve this much help and support? I was sometimes overwhelmed by how much complete strangers cared about me. That I didn't have to do anything to receive it. I've been working with Partners for Peace for over a year now, and I can honestly say I wouldn't be the person I am today if it hadn't been for them. I just wanted to express how thankful I am to have Partners for Peace in my life. When I originally chose to reach out to this organization, I had just experienced one of the greatest traumas of my life. I didn't know what to do or how to deal with the way I was feeling. I felt so lost, alone, and honestly terrified. I was desperate, so much so that I left my comfort zone to reach out to Partners for Peace in an attempt to find a light at the end of the tunnel. This organization, through their support, has allowed me to regain my confidence. It's allowed me to be confident in my decisions, to regain financial stability, and just overall believe in and love myself again, and to not blame myself for what had happened to me. Partners for Peace has altered the course of my life in such a positive way, and I can say that every single person that I've interacted with has been supportive for my daughters and me.
There are definitely a lot of things that I admire about Monica. We've known each other for the past year and a half. We talk on a weekly, sometimes more than that basis, so definitely get to know each other quite well. Some of the things that I really think that stand out about her are, first, her amount of positivity that she has. Even though she's been through some tough, scary, traumatic situations in her life, she's able to reflect on those and still be positive moving forward, and that's incredible. Her amount of strength that even though when she was in the current traumatic experience, she was able to still put one foot forward and do what she needed to do for both herself and her children. And a lot of times, not a lot of people can do that because they're going through something terrifying. They don't know what's going to happen next, but she was still able to do what she needed to do no matter what. And I found that super admirable of her. Some other things that I admire about Monica are her levels of kindness. She's kind to everybody that she meets. She finds the humor in just about anything. She's incredibly intelligent. I think every time we talk, she teaches me something new, or even if I'm having a bad day, she always ends up making me laugh by the end of the phone call. She's an amazing person to talk with. And I think her level of resilience, she should not have to have the level of resilience that she has, but she doesn't let what she's gone through hold her back. I originally applied to Partners for Peace because of my past experiences with domestic violence, and I've always had the passion since college to make a difference in the world. But the past couple of years that I've worked for Partners for Peace, my original reasonings have definitely turned into so much more than that. it's truly like an honor and a privilege to be able to walk side by side with the survivors and watch them grow through all of their hard work. They like to give us the credit for it sometimes, but they're truly the ones that are doing all the work, and it means so much to me that I'm able to watch them grow.
I guess if you put a word to it, I was a victim. Not by choice. Nobody ever is. It's just, I think you, at the time, you believe in yourself enough that you can make that other person realize what they're doing is painful. It's hurting you. It's changing you. It's bringing you into a place you never thought you would be. Into a person you never thought you would be. And you become so hyper-focused on wanting the person that's hurting you to be okay, you forget you. Forget everything that you loved and you wanted and you cared about.
Do you think you consider yourself a survivor now?
I do, because I was able to find myself again, to remember the things that I loved. There are the people that I love, my family that I love, but me, I didn't love myself for a really long time because I didn't care about myself. I cared about what that other person thought, what they thought they needed from me. So I tried to become that. And you don't have to reach a breaking point to reach out. You don't have to be afraid that you're going to be judged because of something that you were put through. That you should stop judging people that were put through it. Nobody can predict the future. I've said this before. You can't predict what somebody's going to do a year from now, 5 years from now, 8 years from now. And you can't blame the victim for not knowing that they were going to be harmed emotionally, mentally, physically. That needs to change. It's a big thing that needs to change. My level of appreciation could never be completely described in words, but if I could start to describe the individuals that make up this driving force, this shining beacon of hope that is Partners for Peace, it would be amazing, beautiful, supportive, understanding and loving, driven and life-changing. But that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of what Partners for Peace means to me. In some ways, it saddens me that one day I will no longer need Partners for Peace. Not just for the financial support, but because I will miss the individuals who have so deeply impacted my life. The emotional support, strength, and courage that have been given so freely to me. I will be forever grateful that such an organization exists in this world and within my lifetime. I'm truly blessed to be able to know such a beautiful group of people.
I just want to take a moment to breathe and encourage other people to take a deep breath with me too. Deep breath in and a deep breath out. Because that was quite the story. Thank you to Monica and to Jenna for sharing this with us. We don't take lightly hearing survivor stories, and when they give us permission to share it in these spaces so other people can bear witness. It means a lot to us because it helps break the silence. It helps other survivors out there hear that they're not alone, and hopefully encourage other people to reach out and get the support that they may be needing. Also, I think I'm really grateful that Jenna was able to open up about what it's like to work side by side with survivors, because it really is a kind of magic, the bond between a survivor and their advocate and the work that they do together. Thank you. Now, we have more to share with you all. Here we go. We have another door prize winner, Darcy Merrill. Congratulations. We have a Partners for Peace water bottle for you. We'll be reaching out to get your contact information so we can get that in the mail to you. Congratulations, Darcy. And we are stronger together, folks. When we work together, we can do great things. So we want to start off with our staff.
Look at that picture. This is one of my favorite slides of this whole presentation. But before I talk a little bit about our staff, I just am so grateful to be able to hear Monica's story and hear her and Jenna go back and forth about what it's like to work together and how they have impacted each other's lives. And I just want to remind everybody who's with us today that you never know whose life you'll impact when you hand them a helpline number or when you are that listening ear for that person. So just keep that in mind the next time you're interacting with somebody who needs some support. You just never know that you might be that person for them in that day, the way that Jenna is that person for Monica right now. So thank you to the two of them. I get the pleasure of being able to talk about our incredible staff and some of our volunteers. Look at this list, look at these pictures. They are just an incredible force, if nothing else. I want to start off with a quote that I was reading recently by Tarana Burke, the founder of the Me Too movement. And she said, "An exchange of empathy provides an entry point for a lot of people to see what healing looks like." Burke describes the exact exchange of empathy that occurs between a survivor and an advocate. And that's exactly what we saw demonstrated in the relationship between Jenna and Monica. That exchange may be the first glimpse a survivor gets at the possibility of healing. This exchange often includes trudging through stories of abuse and violence, and the resulting feelings of fear, shame, anger, and uncertainty that goes along with the trudging. Sharing in this experience with a survivor is what makes our work as advocates so meaningful and life-changing. It truly does take a special person to show up day in and day out in the middle of a pandemic that never seems to end and be there for others. Fortunately, so many of those people have landed here at Partners for Peace, and I could not be more thrilled. Each one of them brings their own perspectives and experiences, and it's those differences that make this such a wonderful place to work, learn, and grow. This gaggle of staff, they're funny, they're kind, sometimes they can be dark, they're really crafty, motivated, they're reflective, caring, innovative, dedicated, patient, resilient, compassionate, and the list goes on and on and on. I have infinite gratitude and appreciation for this team. They all understand how important the little things are and know that the jobs they hold are so much more than jobs. They embrace that they are part of a movement working to create a more humane and just society. They are curious and they lean into their differences to find commonalities with the ultimate goal of supporting survivors of abuse and violence. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, Partners for Peace staff, it is a pleasure to work with you and learn from you every day. Ooh, it gets me a little emotional. You bring peace and hope to our communities and the survivors that you work in partnership with. It is such an honor to work with each and every one of you. I feel like there should be like this round of applause, so I will do that for all of you. Next, I get to talk a little bit about our governing board, and here comes another really beautiful slide so that you get to see all of their faces and their names. These individuals, they dedicate their time, energy, and passion to forwarding the mission of Partners for Peace as members of our governing board. This group, that was known as the steering committee for over 4 decades, became the Partners for Peace governing board in September of 2021. That was a part of our huge organizational restructuring that we talked about earlier. Throughout the year, the governing board worked with a consultant who helped them create this body that could stand ready to collaborate with staff and volunteers to achieve the organization's strategic goals of housing, inclusivity, accessibility, promotion, housing, and social justice. Those are a lot of words that might not mean a lot right now, but they mean a lot to us every day when we're doing our work. They've also provided leadership in naming the role our organization needs to play in the injustices that have been experienced by so many and the exploration of ways in which we can repair the harm and prevent further harm. Their willingness to be open-minded to different ways of thinking and operating is inspirational and admirable. And I, for one, really appreciate that. This group of 9 members strong, each of them has their own lives. That's also very rich and full. Some of them are students. Some of them are retired and should be off on a cruise ship somewhere. I mean, one of them is a Girl Scout leader, member of clergy. I mean, we have so much diversity on our board when it comes to the lives of the individuals who are volunteering their time to support our work in ending domestic violence. They are committed to this organization and committed to ensuring that it is viable and strong, and so that services are available to anyone who needs them for years to come. On behalf of the entire staff at Partners for Peace, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our board members. We could not do what we do without you. Thank you for being Partners for Peace. And another round of applause for that group. Casey, I think you have the pleasure of being able to talk about some of our additional other volunteers that support our work.
Yeah, we have great volunteers here at Partners for Peace. Well, about 50 years ago, Partners for Peace actually started as a group of volunteers, and we continue to rely on volunteers today. Last year, 49 volunteers gave 3,456 hours of their time to Partners for Peace. They answered helpline calls, they facilitated support groups, they participated in committees, they organized donations, and they showed up in any way that they could for survivors in our community. It truly takes all kinds, and there's all sorts of ways to get involved. And we're so grateful to our core group of volunteers. I posted this thank you last week on our social media, and someone reached out, and this is what they had to say. They said, Partners for Peace is the best volunteers ever. She said, P.S. the helpline volunteers are so well trained, I keep thinking they're staff. And I just loved that so much. I had to include that quote here. We really, truly could not do this work without our dedicated volunteers and also our interns. We've had great interns over the past couple of years from the social work program at the University of Maine, as well as criminal justice program at Hassan University and other programs as well. We love our volunteers and we love our interns. Oh, speaking of it takes all kinds, it really does truly take a village. Here are a few examples of how donors, fundraisers, organizers, community members came together to make make our work possible and to, well, in one example, make the holidays cheery and bright. We had a really successful holiday program. Donors came together to make sure that the children and adults in our residential program had happy and safe holidays last year. I want to give a special shout out to Tracy Flagg and Casella. They always make sure to not only donate gifts, and they also collect funds and make a pretty sizable donation to the organization every year. We also had just great support from our community to make sure that the survivors in our residential program were well fed during the pandemic, because food insecurity is definitely connected to the experiences of domestic violence for folks in our community. Fiddlehead's Restaurant, Food and Medicine, PCHD, Good Shepherd Food Bank, and the Brick Church all came together. They partnered with us to make sure that healthy meals were provided to our shelter guests. And then Sally Nason, this is just one example of many community members, but I wanted to spotlight Sally for a moment. She had the creative idea of working with her patrons. She sells paparazzi jewelry, and the people that she works with, the wonderful group of women, they decided that they wanted to purchase jewelry for survivors. So they had a paparazzi party, and instead of buying jewelry for themselves, they bought jewelry for the survivors in our program, because doesn't everyone need a little bling every once in a while to make their life a little bit shiny in a time that feels really hopeless and can be really hard? But everyone deserves to feel special, and that is something that Sally and this great group of women decided to make sure was possible for the survivors, again, in our residential program. So we're just so grateful to the people in our community for coming together and being really creative to make sure that the survivors that we serve in Penobscot and Piscataquis counties are well taken care of. Speaking of community partners, I'd like to introduce you to my coworker, Angie, to do a partner spotlight.
Thank you, Casey. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angie Alfonso. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Advocacy and Outreach Services here at Partners for Peace. Today, I have the honor of highlighting a community partner who truly stood out to us this past year, Dan Monahan from Pine Tree Legal Assistance. As you've heard us previously mention, we have a significant shortage of affordable legal representation for survivors of domestic violence in civil legal matters in both Penobscot and Piscataquis counties. And while we plan to change this in the future, we want to take a moment to acknowledge Dan, who has truly been a champion for survivors in our region. We legal advocates joke that Dan Monahan should be cloned. And I guess it's not really a joke, because it's actually exactly what we wish for when we're challenged with helping survivors find representation for a protection order or a family matter. Really, who would not want Dan in their corner? He brings a "how can I help" energy to whatever the interaction is, and a willing spirit to try his best to be there for those who would otherwise go without representation. He approaches survivors with the utmost respect and compassion, honoring the survivor's lead all along the way. And when he can't represent an individual, Dan often coaches and prepares the survivor and the advocate through conference calls, pep talks, and the sharing of his years of experience representing low-income survivors at Pine Tree Legal. So back to that cloning idea, we could use a few more Dan Monahans in court on any given day. We want to thank you for being you and for all you do, Dan. Thank you. Dan is just one more example of some amazing champions that exist in our community. And next, we'd like to take just a moment to think about some additional champions and their community partnerships. We know that we truly cannot complete our work and be successful in our role without our corporate sponsors and champions in our community. I'd like to take just a moment to thank O'Brien and LaChance Incorporated, Puritan Medical Products, Bangor Savings Bank, Pleasant River Lumber Company, Bar Harbor Bank and Trust, the Advertising Specialists of Maine, the Rotary Club of Bangor, and Maine Savings Federal Credit Union. We truly could not do the work that we do each and every day without the support of our champions within the business sector. Thank you to our corporate partners. At this time, I'm going to invite Amanda to join us to introduce you all to one more person who has certainly been part of the Partners for Peace legacy. Thank you.
Well, this year has certainly had its fair shares and ups and downs for our organization. And one of the valleys was the recent loss of Dr. Ann Schoenberger. Ann was a member of our steering committee for many, many decades. And it was with the mission to set the organization up for some long-term financial stability so that survivors of domestic violence would always have the support they need. Ann led multiple fundraising campaigns to strengthen the organization's financial position and infrastructure. She trained volunteers, knocked on doors, held events, wrote letters, sold tickets, made phone calls, and shook hands, all to raise funds to make sure that the former Spruce Run, now Partners for Peace, would always be a financially strong organization. There's so many stories to tell about Ann and the incredible legacy that she's leaving, having been a part of this organization for so many decades and having been a mentor to many, many advocates, to many students that went through the Women's Studies program that she developed at the University of Maine. And of course, for us in her mentorship as a leader on our steering committee for more than 35 years. We are blessed with so many wonderful memories of her, and she will be so missed by all of us, but her legacy of lifting up women and survivors of abuse will live on. We recently had a really lovely event at the University of Maine where we had the opportunity to hear from her family and many members of the community who were impacted by her generosity, by her knowledge, by her patience, and by her kind ways. And I felt so privileged to be able to be there and hear other people share their stories about Ann. She's just an incredible human being. So now that we are done kind of talking about and acknowledging the individuals who've been integral to the Partners for Peace work and network over this past year, we have another door prize. Is that true, Casey? We do. Dick Brown, you want a door prize? You will get a Partners for Peace
bag.
Thank you. Bag. I couldn't remember what we'd given out already. And
yeah, it's a beautiful Partners for Peace tote. Again, we'll be reaching out to get your address so we can make sure to get that in the mail to you.
So, you know, we have lots of opportunities for people to get involved in our work here at Partners for Peace, whether it's joining the team and being a staff member. We have some open positions right now, so check out our website for that information. We're always looking for diverse voices to join many of the committees. Our pool of volunteers, whether it's helpline volunteers or our governing board members, you could actually be our next teammate. So check out our website for more opportunities to help us shape a better tomorrow for survivors of domestic violence.
Oops. And this is very, very exciting to us. So we hope that you found Monica's story to be inspiring. And if you are a survivor of domestic violence, or you know someone who is, and you or they would like to share the story, we are launching our Survivor Story Project. We are going to be collecting stories from people who are willing to share with us and want to be a part of this project, which we will be presenting at our 50th, yes, our 50th anniversary in the spring of 2023. Daniel's going to drop that link in our chat. And folks are welcome to start submitting stories on our website starting today. We are looking forward to hearing your stories, collecting them and honoring them in all the ways that we know how. And especially we are so excited to be able to present that at our 50th anniversary, which will be, like I said, in the spring of 2023. And lastly, we'd love for you all to help us grow. Help us by becoming a perennial partner at Partners for Peace. Or in other words, instead of making a one-time gift to Partners for Peace, how about making your gift monthly or quarterly or annually? I don't know, how about weekly? Starting next week, we are going to have options on our website for people to be able to make gifts on a recurring basis. And that will be launched, and we will be sending out an email to everyone who registered. We'll make sure that you get that information. And if you are not a part of our email list, we're going to provide that information right here at the end. Amanda?
Yeah, just a few more things to point out before we end. I'm really impressed with our timing. We are really close to being on time. That's not something we're always all that great at, so kudos to us. Again, thank you, Casey and Daniel, for all your work in putting this program together. Thank you all for joining us here today. Please consider staying connected with our organization because, as Casey mentioned, this upcoming year, we will be celebrating 50 years of providing services to people in this region who've been affected by abuse and violence, but we also were integral in making sure that domestic violence services like this exist throughout the state, and we're a part of developing services throughout our entire country. So there's going to be a lot of things to celebrate over the course of the next year. And we want to make sure that you get all the up-to-date information about how we are celebrating our 50th anniversary. And I can guarantee 100% there will be cake. There will be cake, and we will be in person for something. Just a few other things. We will be publishing an annual report, and we are hoping to make it as interactive as this presentation has been today. So be out on the lookout for that. We think that that kind of visual is so pleasing and so much more meaningful. So we hope that you'll take an opportunity to look at that. And for sure, if you subscribe to our email list, you will get that annual report in your inbox. Thank you all again so much for joining us today and for being a part of the Partners for Peace network. It truly is a pleasure to work and live in this community and in this region, and know that you all are here to support the work that we do and support survivors of abuse and violence throughout our state.
Thank you, everyone. Be well.